Ever wanted to build those slick Python interfaces? You know the ones? Well, get ready, because today we're going deep on Tkinter's place layout.
Ah, place. It's kind of like interior design for your code, but way more precise.
Precise placement is exactly what we're after. It's seriously powerful when you need that fine-grained control.
Right, when other layout tools just don't cut it.
We're talking pixel-perfect positioning, elements that scale smoothly with the window, and even some cool tricks to make things appear and disappear like magic, all with this place layout.
It's surprisingly versatile. Let's dive into the source code and see how it all works.
Okay, so looking at this code, it seems like place uses a coordinate system for positioning.
Absolutely. Familiar X and Y coordinates.
I see a bunch of X and Y values here. Is that how we tell Tkinter exactly where to put things?
You got it. It's like plotting things on a graph, but instead of dots, we've got buttons, text boxes, you name it.
So if I wanted a button, let's say 100 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top,
You'd set its X to 100 and its Y to 50?
just like that.
Just like that. The source code example shows this beautifully, by the way. You can literally see how changing those X and Y coordinates in the code moves those labeled boxes around in the window. It's really clear.
That's pretty intuitive. But what happens when the window size changes? Do those elements just stay stuck in those exact pixel positions?
That's where things get interesting. While X and Y give you that absolute positioning, which is great for some things, Tkinter also gives us rel X and rel Y.
Rel and rel I. Those sound suspiciously like relative. Are we talking relative positioning here?
You got it. It's all about relative positioning. Instead of fixed pixels, rel X and rel Y, let us use values between 0 and 1.
So like percentages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Percentages.
So instead of saying 100 pixels from the left, I could say put this element 50% of the way across the width using rel X.
Exactly. And the beauty is your design scales perfectly with the window size. No more elements getting cut off or squished when the window changes.
That's a game changer,
Mhm.
especially when you're designing for different screen sizes, you know.
The source code has some great examples combining rel X and rel Y. Really elegant solutions.
I bet. I'm also seeing this anchor concept in the code, though. What's that about? Sounds kind of mysterious. Okay, anchor. So are we setting sail on a metaphorical sea of code here, or what?
Not quite, haha, but I like the way you think. Anchor is where place gets really interesting. Imagine, instead of just positioning the top left corner of an element, you get to choose any point within that element as its reference point.
Oh, okay, so like pinning it down with a virtual push pin, you mean?
Exactly. A virtual push-in.
And we can choose where that pin goes. Center, corner, you name it.
You got it. Center, any corner, north, south, east, west. The source code actually has a really cool example. It shows two elements that have the exact same X and Y coordinates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but one is anchored to NU, that's northwest, the default, and the other to SE for southeast. And the visual difference is striking. They look totally different.
Wow. So even with identical coordinates, the anchor value determines which part of that element actually lines up with that point. That's wild. I bet this is really useful when the window size changes, huh?
Absolutely. Imagine a button anchored to the center. As the window resizes, that button's center stays locked in those relative coordinates. It's always perfectly centered. No more chasing buttons around the screen.
That is brilliant and way more elegant than trying to recalculate positions every time the window size changes.
Way more elegant.
Okay. What about controlling the size of elements, though? The source code mentioned real width and real height. Are those similar to real X and real Y?
They are. So rel X and rel Y handle the position. Real width and real height, they let you define the size proportionally to the parent window, like responsive design, but right in your code.
No, if I wanted an image to, say, always take up half the width of the window,
You set its real width to 0.5.
and no matter how you resize the window.
No matter how you stretch it, shrink it, that image keeps its relative width. There are a few different examples in the source code. It all comes together really elegantly.
This is seriously cool stuff. But what about making things a little more interactive? The source code hinted at, like, making elements appear and disappear.
Ah, now you're talking. That's the magic of place forget.
Please forget.
Yeah, it's a handy little function that removes an element from the layout, just like that. Poof, gone. Like it never even existed.
Wait, seriously, it just vanishes. Then how do you bring it back?
You just use place to reposition it, often back to its original coordinates.
Okay.
The source code actually uses buttons to control the visibility of a label. One button uses place forget to make it disappear, and the other brings it right back with place.
That's incredible. So we could use that to create things like menus that pop up or tooltips, or even just hide and show different parts of the interface based on what the user is doing.
Exactly. It's really powerful for creating those interactive elements, displaying dynamic content. And when you combine it with all the other features of place, well, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Speaking of interactive, what about moving elements around? I saw some code examples where you could use buttons to move a label around. Left,
Yeah.
right, up, down.
Ah, yes. Now we're getting to the heart of dynamic layouts. Those examples show how simple functions can be used to recalculate an element's x and y coordinates each time you press a button.
So if I click the right button,
It might increase the x-coordinate, yeah. Make the element scoot over to the right.
it would move to the right. And we could do the same thing vertically by tweaking the y-coordinate, right?
Exactly. Simple concept, but you can create some really dynamic and engaging interfaces.
It's amazing how these basic movements open up so many possibilities.
Hmm.
So we've covered a lot with place, but let's be real for a second. How often do developers actually use it for real-world applications? It seems almost too simple, especially compared to some of the other layout managers we've talked about.
You've hit on a key point. Place is great, super powerful for specific things, but it's not always the go-to solution, especially for really big, complex layouts.
So when would you say place really shines? What are its strengths compared to other layout managers, like Pack and Grid?
Place is the way to go when you need absolute precision or you're working with really specific customized layouts. Imagine designing a game, right? You need those characters and objects to be positioned perfectly down to the pixel. Or maybe you're building a scientific visualization tool. You need that fine-grained control over where everything goes. Place gives you that control.
So it's like place is the microscope, and maybe Pack and Grid are more like the magnifying glass. Sometimes you need that extra level of detail.
That's a great analogy because Pack and Grid, they excel at creating those structured, predictable layouts. But Place lets you break free from those constraints, create something truly unique and customized.
So it's not about place being better or worse, it's about using the right tool for the job, right?
Exactly. And a good Tkinter developer, they're like a craftsperson. They know which tool is right for the task at hand. And even though Place might not be as common as some of those other layout managers, understanding how it works, it gives you a deeper understanding of Tkinter itself, and that's invaluable.
Totally agree. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of place. It's easy to overlook, but it's surprisingly versatile.
It just goes to show that sometimes the simplest tools can be the most powerful, when used the right way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, everyone. The power of place unlocked. From pixel-perfect positioning to smooth, dynamic movement, this layout manager can really up your Python UI game.
It's all about choosing the right tool for the job. And with Place in your toolkit, you're well on your way to building some truly impressive Python applications.
That's a wrap. Until next time, keep on coding.